Guearva sat at the head of the lush banquet table. The arena owner and minor royalty laughed jovially as his goblet was refilled. He gazed on happily as nobility and oligarchy dined their fill of the parasite's cuisine. He'd even adopted their medieval culture for his jurisdiction. The fat lizard drained his goblet and motioned for another from the parasite woman in chains behind him. He watched with sick glee as the malnourished female parasite tipped the jug with dead eyes. Guearva took pleasure in how well he treated his parasites. He gave them food, shelter, clothing, all from the goodness of his heart. Feeling especially generous, Guearva picked up a leg of poultry and threw it on the ground, watching with glee as his two parasite servants rapidly dove for it, fighting each other tooth and nail for the small piece of nourishment. Guearva broke into applause as his wine servant clubbed the other with the mostly empty jug, leaving the other unmoving as they savagely tore into the meat. Suddenly, the massive double doors burst open. A heavily injured Geknosion holding a Gauss rifle and wearing the tattered remains of a court jester's outfit burst in, crying out, My lord! The parasites have escaped! They're armed, and they're heading this way!" The jester suddenly pitched forward with a sickening noise, a dagger buried to the hilt in the back of their skull. The entire gathering froze, looking at the dead jester in shock and disbelief, the sounds of violent fighting reaching them through the open doors. Guearva was just about to reassure everyone that everything would be fine, raising his arms to show off his grand robe, but he stopped, staring at the doorway in pale-faced shock. The human had shoulder-length black, greasy hair. An infected cut across their face oozed black blood and pus, in stark contrasts to the manic smile filled with broken teeth. Poorly fitting Geknosion power armor hung from the sallow boy's frame. A leaf-bladed bastard sword was held low in the right hand, blade dripping blood. A small one-handed axe was clutched in their left, head covered in gore much like the human. The bastard sword was raised and pointed straight at Guearva, as the human spoke in a ragged voice. "I won. I earned mine and my people's freedom. Give it to me." Guearva felt his temper flare at being addressed so rudely. He swung his arm wide across his chest in a grand gesture and shouted, "You think you've earned your freedom, you parasite! That whole thing was a lie to make the fights more entertaining. We never expected one of you dirty creatures to win." Guearva sneered at the blank-faced human as the obese lizard rose to his feet and waddled round the table, continuing to speak. "Your entire species has us to thank for not wiping you out in the first place. You should be grateful. But no, you're here whining about your precious freedom. Lower life forms like you don't deserve the air you breathe. Get out of my sight now, you filthy gutter rat!" The fat lizard smugly watched the human drop their weapons, but the next thing he knew, he was on the ground and his face hurt. Guearva looked up, dumbfounded as the human grabbed a fistful of his ornate robes and drew their fist back again. "We should be grateful?" The human hit the fat lizard hard, making blood gush from Guearva's nose. The fat lizard whimpered as the human brought back their fist, begging, "Please, I'm sorry. Don't hit me." The human began to shout. "What? Sorry for what? Sending thousands off to die for entertainment? Working millions to death in uranium mines? Stuffing yourself like a fat pig while we starve?" Each shouted question was punctuated with a punch so hard it broke bones and split scales. Guearva blubbered and whimpered for his life as the human threw him to the ground, eyes swollen shut. There was silence for a moment as Guearva begged blindly. The lower royalty tried to crawl away, thinking the human had left, but he didn't get far until he felt a heavy metal knee in his back and a serrated blade press into his throat scales. The human's voice was like ice as the blade was pressed into Guearva's throat. "Now, be a good little piggy and die squealing." Guearva felt the blade get dragged across his throat, pain blossoming quickly, fading as he began to feel lightheaded. Arduously, he rolled over, eyes unswelling just enough to see the boy's blank smile and the towering cloaked figure behind them. Drake watched the light fade from the arena master's eyes, the small nuclear sun in his chest cooling slightly as he turned towards the frozen lower nobles and oligarchs, then at their captive servants. as the humans from the pits finally began showing up. Finally, he approached a young woman whose chains were held in a death grip by an old, gray-scaled Geknosion. He pressed the knife into her palm, and she looked up, eyes starting to clear as he gave her a warm smile. Freedom is only a cut away. The woman took the knife as the wealthy and powerful Geknosions suddenly became even more fearful. Some even quietly begged their servants to spare them. Drake just nodded to the other servants as he felt the exhaustion start to overtake him. He took a seat on the Arena Master's ornate chair, staring down at the Geknosions who looked all but powerless now. Drake slowly let his eyes close as the sound of rending flesh and drowned screams filled the ornate dining hall. Drake felt a great weight disappear from his shoulders, but a new one building in his chest. He'd liked making the Arena Master suffer, and he wasn't sure how he felt about that.